So as you can see, this has a shift rod here. There's a threaded section that comes down here. So what happened is the thread's locked up and I couldn't get the lower unit off. I didn't want to disconnect it on the top and then bring it all the way through here. So it ended up breaking off. So I have to replace that, and that's about a $65 part. So yeah, never sees grease. Make sure you lubricate these parts here. I have basically the cover assembly, which is really the housing. And I like to replace a lot of these parts, especially when it comes to the ability to cool your engine. I don't usually mess around with that. It's just worth to replace that, so that's going to go. The impeller, you can see the difference. I had two fingers going two opposite directions. You want to make sure that they all go the same direction. So as it spins inside the housing, it should be going all the same direction. That this is the correct way a water pump should be positioned, not one finger going the opposite direction, creating a gap. You don't want to have this situation here. That's no good. So I got the little washers. There's one above and below the impeller. That's going to sit on that shaft. I have a new gasket and the wear plate, or they call a face plate. This is what's going to go down here with the gasket, the housing, the impeller is going to spin on there. I recommend changing these parts. This looks to be very good condition, this housing here. I did do a seal check on this shaft seal here. There's an O-ring here that rides inside there on the shift shaft, and also there's some seals down in here. There should be two on that prop shaft. That is very wise to check. You want to make sure you have everything checking out, and you have a good 8 to 12, or depending on your manufacturer's recommendation, amount of pressure and vacuum for the gear case. So what I'm going to do here is actually just take some basic tools, just re-clean up this surface here and get all of this gasket material off carefully without scoring this plastic, and just go around and make sure that this face is nice and sealed. One other thing I like to talk about is these marine greases. They're basically the same thing. They're great to use. I'd recommend them on any kind of screws and attachments. Depends where you put it, but anytime that you need a lubrication with a screws, when they meet metal, I like to give just a little bit of a touch. And just as an example, I will actually use just a little bit, kind of like that. And what I usually do is I run the grease just down the front portion of the threads. Not a lot, don't go overboard, just a little bit. So as this screw is going in, that grease is going to follow down the threads as it meets the metal and just kind of draws it in. So one area also on your lower unit is this guide plug here. Now I could take some pliers. These are replaceable. This one's not the best condition. I'm basically just going to take a little wire brush and actually just kind of clean that up there, and just put some grease on that, hit that little section there, and really not to be too worried about that. This goes on first, kind of keeps the impeller off this little plate. That should sit just there in that groove, dead center. Next is going to be the impeller. You just line it up straight down, should fall right in that groove. All right, so there we go. So as you turn the shaft, it should lock in. You should feel it lock in there. Just take a little bit of that excess grease that I have there and just lubricate inside that stainless, because this is where it's going to be initially moving around. You don't want a whole lot. You don't want to load it up, just enough to get a thin coat over the top of that. Set it right on, drive her down. What I usually do is I put a little downward pressure and I turn clockwise the direction of the impeller, the way it turns. All right, so there we have our water pump. Everything's installed, greased, everything's fine, good. Ready for the install.